In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a lower ball joint on your Chevy Silverado. This will be located behind the front wheel. Let's get started. Using a 22mm socket, remove the 6 lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Using an 18mm socket, remove the 2 caliper bracket bolts. Get them both loose before removing them. Remove the caliper. We're going to hang this on a hook so there's no tension on the brake line. Remove the rotor. Remove the connector from the bracket. We're going to remove the ABS connector. We're going to push up on that red tab. There's a black button right there. Push on that. Pull straight out and remove the connector. Remove the plastic stay from the bracket. Using a 36mm socket, we're going to remove the axle nut. Be sure that the axle moves freely inside of the hub. If it does not, you can use a soft face hammer. Give it a tap. Remove the cotter pin out of the lower ball joint. Using a 27mm socket, remove the lower ball joint nut. We're going to leave this on just 1 thread. Using an 18mm wrench, we're going to remove the upper ball joint nut. Loosen it till there's only 1 or 2 threads left. Using a hammer, we're going to bonk the side of the knuckle, releasing the upper ball joint from the knuckle. Do the same thing on the lower ball joint. Using a 21mm socket, remove the nut for the outer tie rod. I'm going to use a 10mm wrench on the stud to hold it still. Remove the outer tie rod nut from the stud, and remove the outer tie rod from the knuckle. If you need to, you can hit the side of the knuckle to release the tension on this. Using a pry bar in the coil, we're going to pull down on our upper control arm, taking the pressure off the nut. We're going to remove the nut off the upper ball joint. Slowly let the upper control arm go up. Push the axle through, remove the lower ball joint nut, and remove the knuckle. Using a pair of snap ring pliers, we're going to remove the snap ring around the ball joint. Our snap ring is pretty stuck, rust welded in. Now that we have it half out, I'm going to use a punch. Give it a few taps and release it. We're going to use a 3/8 wrench to remove our grease fitting to be able to push down straight on top of the ball joint. We have a ball joint press set up to press out the ball joint. We have a small cup pushing down on the top of the ball joint. Then we have a cup that will receive it. Press the ball joint out of the control arm. Use a wire brush to clean where the ball joint is going to be pressed in. Before installing our new ball joint, we're going to remove the rubber so we're not pressing on it as we install the new one. Just take a flat blade, go around and pull it off. We're going to use 1 cup to push on this outer lip of the ball joint. Put it up in there. And we have a cap to receive the top. Make sure everything is centered and square, and press the ball joint up into the lower control arm. Go until it's bottomed out. Install the boot onto the bottom of the ball joint. You'll feel it snap on, just like that. Install the snap ring. Pull the axle back down. Get the axle lined up with the hub. Get the lower ball joint lined up. And we're going to put the nut on the lower ball joint. Make sure the splines of the axle are lined up. We're going to push up on the knuckle and tighten our lower ball joint nut as far as we can. Using a pry bar, we're going to pull the upper ball joint down into the knuckle and get the nut started. Install the outer tie rod into the knuckle. Install the nut on the bottom. Hold the stud and snug down the nut. Snug down the lower ball joint nut. The new nut is now a 22 millimeter. Torque the lower ball joint to 129 foot-pounds. And then up to an additional 60 degrees or until you can fit the cotter pin through the slot in the nut and the stud. Install the cotter pin. Bend the end down and around. Chop off the tail. Torque the tie rod nut to 26 foot-pounds, and then 85 to 100 degrees. We're going to install a jack under our knuckle and push up. You may not have to do this, but since we have a leveling kit in our truck, the upper control arm hits a stop and does not allow you to pull it down into the knuckle. So pushing up here will allow us to pull down on the upper control arm, seating it into the knuckle. Using a pry bar in the coil, pull that upper control arm down and snug down the upper ball joint nut. The torque for the upper ball joint is 35 foot-pounds and then up to 100 degrees. Do the best you can. Remove the jack. Install the plastic stay into the bracket. Install the connector. Push until you hear a click. If you don't hear a click, give it a pull. Make sure it's locked on. Close the red locking tab. Install the connector into the bracket. Install the axle nut. Snug it down. Torque the axle nut to 177 foot-pounds while holding the hub still. Install the rotor. Pull the caliper off the hook. Install it around the rotor. Install the caliper bracket bolts. Torque the caliper bracket bolts to 170 foot-pounds. Remove the hook if you used one. Install the wheel. Get the lug nuts started. Snug the lug nuts down. Torque the lug nuts in a star pattern to 140 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.